What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Devin Belanger, and if it looks like I'm in all black because I'm going to a funeral, well, I might as well be, because today, this is the last afternoon that I will ever have the Moog Sub 37 in my studio. That's right, after many years and many records together, I've decided to let the Sub 37 go to another home, so I thought it'd be fun to do a retrospective on the amazing legacy of the Sub 37 and some of my favorite features as to why I think this is still one of the best mono synths. If you want to know why I'm letting it go, we'll wait till the end of the video, I'll discuss that, but for now, let's get started with the rest of this ambient Sub 37 jam, excelling at what it does best. First unveiled in 2014 as a successor and upgrade to the Moog Sub Fatty, the Sub 37 Tribute Edition was an immediate hit when it first went onto the scene. To me at least, the Sub 37 represents sort of a bridge instrument between the early years of Moog rediscovering itself with the Voyager and then the Little Fatty, Sub Fatty, those kinds of synths, and the modern era of the Matriarch, Grandmother, Mother 32, and then, the future era where we are now within music. Taking one look at the Sub 37, it's immediately apparent that you're playing a Moog, and I think honestly, in my humble opinion, the panel and layout design and aesthetic is pretty unparalleled today and has aged so much better than other previous synths from that time period. However, when you plug in the Sub 37 and play a note, the tone you're greeted with isn't exactly what I'd call vintage Moog. The aggression and smeared saturation is by far the most characteristic sound of the Sub 37 and something we'll dive into more in the walkthrough. You'll hear my thoughts and more examples of this in just a second, but spoiler alert, from me, I absolutely love this overdriven sound, but not everyone did, and it led to, in 2017, Moog discontinuing the Sub 37 Tribute Edition and replacing it with the subsequent 37, which is essentially the exact same synthesizer, but with a better keybed and more headroom so that you don't distort and drive the sound as easily. Internet controversy aside, the Sub 37 is probably, I'm gonna say it, the most iconic of the modern mono synthesizers, and it's been used by everyone from Deadmau5, Trent Reznor, Muse, Tame Impala, and so many more. Probably the most iconic use of the Sub 37 in the modern era, however, is its popularity in the techno space. Notably, artists like Steven Bodzin are always seen playing their Sub 37 on stage, and many techno producers are armed with a Sub 37, a drum machine, and not much else, and it's a classic sound that you'll recognize. next up, let's jump onto the front panel, and I'm going to show you my 3 favorite things about the Sub 37 that I'm really, truly going to miss, and then we'll wrap it up with the story of why I decided to let this go, and if I'm making a mistake. All right, well, here we are for one final time on the front panel of the Moog Sub 37. I'm going to go jump to an init preset, and this synth has been out for years, so we're just going to go through some of my favorite features and some of the things that I think make the Sub 37 stand out even many years later today. So really the main things for me that the Sub 37 still is pretty unmatched in terms of mono synths is the amount of drive and saturation that are really musically implemented that you can send into this filter. So we've got our multi-drive, which this is going to get loud, so I'll just turn this down a little bit here as I do it. Nice and loud. Let's turn that down a bit. And then if that weren't enough, we have our feedback as well. And you can play with how these two interact with resonance. And detune. Like right off the bat, we've already got a really vibey sound here. Let's just throw in some reverb. I've got the Big Sky MX over here for reverb. Hard sync it. The sub oscillator, wow. The Sub 37, because of its extremely musical way that it overdrives the filter with multi-drive and saturation and how these work, really, you can't make them sound bad, the multi-drive and the feedback. It just really makes for a really kind of organic experience. And it's great for drones, for film score patches. I've used it in a lot of my music over the years for like low brams in like trailer sounds, that kind of thing. And again, the use of a good reverb with the Sub 37 takes it into beautiful territory. Moving on, the other thing that I really quite like about this is the duo mode. It's funny how everything that is originally criticized is eventually something that people love. I don't know if that's the expression. But when the Sub 37 first came out, many people, myself included, felt like it didn't really have enough headroom for the duo mode and would just distort really easily. Let's turn that on maybe. Let's bring it back to saw waves. Here you go. You can kind of hear it's like not the cleanest sounding, bass and melody. But what's really funny is that, that's what makes it so unique. If I just had two basic VCOs that, it sounded like regular like that, and it was perfectly clean, then this wouldn't be that unique for a paraphonic synth, because two-note paraphony is very, maybe back in the day when this was made, that was kind of cool. Now I feel like almost every synth has that. That's a mono synth. So how does the Sub 37 stand out? It's because of this incredibly overdriven mixer. Let's turn it up even more. Listen to that saturation. Let's bring it in through the reverb again. Again, I'm going to turn off the reverb, but I could play on that sound all day. It's one of the things that really makes the Sub 37 stand out. And funny enough, when I brought in the Sub 37 to upgrade the key bed, which frankly the original ones were not very good, I had the option to upgrade the mixer to have more headroom, and I chose not to, because that saturated sound to me is what makes this sound unique over the Grandmother, the Matriarch, the subsequent series. It's just really like this in-your-face Moog sound, which is a perfect mix of modern and vintage to me. Moving on, I'm going to go over one final thing that I think is really cool and worth giving a shout out for on the Sub 37 that I'm going to miss, because not a lot of mono synths, at least ones with this character, can do that. And that is the ability to tempo sync virtually everything. So if I go ahead and I start, looping the envelope, turn this back up. We'll hold it, right? We've got our classic sort of looping envelope thing that we've seen synths do. But what's really cool, and I haven't seen it implemented on a lot of other synths, is the ability to sync every single thing here, including those looping envelopes, including the LFOs like you'd normally expect, and including the sequencer. Everything can be synced to a master tempo. So let's go ahead and we'll sync this. And now you can see it's going in time with the arpeggiator. Let's do the same thing with the filter envelope. I probably should click sync. I completely forgot about that. There we go. Let's change the slope of the filter. Let's bring in some modulation here. Let's send it to the white noise level. Sync it. Let's do mod 2. We'll do something with the pitch. Let's do this. Put it through the reverb again. Let's add some glide. Let's add oscillator 2. Let's make oscillator 2 modified by this as well. Like, that is a pretty cool sound. I think a fun way to finish off this video is for me to design from scratch the classic style of sound that I have used the Sub 37 for on my music, tried and true for years. It might not sound like much on its own, but like I mentioned in the intro, this has been my go-to bass sound that has pretty much solved any mix issues I've ever had, and I will definitely miss making it on the Sub 37. So we'll start off just with a simple saw wave. We'll change that to square wave. And then we're going to go ahead and multi-drive it. Add some release. Add the sub oscillator. Add the second oscillator a fifth above. In terms of sawtooth, if we open the filter, you can hear what I'm doing here. Basically the fifth is just adding that texture like the overtones on a bass guitar. We've got lots of copious amounts of multi-drive here. We'll bring down the filter. Keyboard track to taste. Then if you want a bit of vibrato, okay, so you're the vibrato type, and that is literally it. If you want to get fancy with it, you can shape the envelope. add velocity. That's probably too much. This sub bass will destroy literally any sound system, and you've heard it countless times below on the very bottom of my tracks. Final tip on it, if you want to do a similar sub bass but make it a little bit less bottom heavy, because the Sub 37, as the name suggests, has just a copious amount of bass, you can actually turn up the resonance, which on a ladder filter acts as a bass compensation knob, because as you turn it up, the bass drops out a little. Personally, for me, I like it resonance off, but you do you. So the question that I promised I would answer at the beginning of this video, if I like the Moog Sub 37 so much, why am I letting it go? Well, my rule for synthesizers, and tell me if you have something similar, is that if a piece of gear sits around for at least a couple months and doesn't really get much use, and I don't find myself missing it, then it's probably time to let that piece of gear go. And for me, while I'm totally aware that this can't be replaced by a Prophet 10, since getting my Prophet 10, I haven't really had the desire to plug in my Sub 37, because the Prophet 10, it might not be as driven, but it has a very similar sound in terms of how easily it slots into the bottom end of any mix. And I've found that for workflow's sake, it's been just so easy and convenient doing all my basses on the Prophet 5 with the Matriarch coming in clutch if I need that extra Moog bottom end. Similarly, the GS Music E7, while not as driven, also has the same ladder filter, so I've been able to kind of mimic some of the things that I've enjoyed doing on the Sub 37 as well. Simply put, it's just not getting enough use, and I think it's time that somebody else takes advantage of this awesome synthesizer. This channel doesn't fund itself as well. I've got to use the money towards something else in the future, and I think that for that reason, the Moog Sub 37, an absolute icon, it's time for it to go to a new studio. Before I let the Sub 37 go, I'm pleased to announce that I did make a custom patch bank. The banks on the Sub 37 are only 16 presets, so it is a small bank and priced accordingly, but I am pleased to say that this is my first ever mono synth patch bank, and I hope you enjoy it. If you do have a Sub 37, you can pick it up in the description below, and here are some sound demos of the Sub 37 to play us out for this iconic synth. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.